What's up, Fight fans? Welcome to episode 25 of K-Shock, your one-stop shop to get all your UFC and fight news updates you're going to need weekly, now in color television. Unless you're listening in the audio version only, and in that case, you miss out on this beautiful face and this even more beautiful tier list. Today, for this monumental episode, we're doing a visual podcast, and we're going to start off with a topic I'm very passionate about, the most overrated and slightly underrated fighters in the UFC. All these fighters you see on the tier list have been in some hot water recently for being either overrated, and I'm going to show you why I either agree or disagree. So, let's get right to it. Starting off hot with the first pick of the tier list, I am putting Shavkat Rakhmonov, number one welterweight contender, in the S tier. He is the most overrated fighter in the UFC, I will say, to this day. Now, a lot of people will say that Shavkat Rakhmonov is a marauder, he's a berserker, he has 18 finishes and 19 fights, he's about to fight for the title, he's undefeated. All of those things are true, but when you really look at it and look more at just the numbers, you see that Shavkat Rakhmonov is kind of actually really overrated. His last win is against Ian Gary on short notice, and he had a very tough technical decision with Ian Gary. Then, before that, he had a fight with Stephen Thompson when he was at 40 years of age and ranked number 6. Jeff Neal was ranked number 6 before that fight, and he went to war with Jeff Neal. Ian Gary, if I forgot to mention, was ranked number 7, and if you're noticing a pattern with all these fights, all his key wins in the past year or so, is that none of them are in the top 5 of the division, and he is being ranked so highly. So many people think he beats Belal Muhammad. I'm pretty sure he's the favorite in that fight, which is insane to me. Belal Muhammad just dominated Leon Edwards earlier this year, and now he's the underdog against Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov loses to Belal Muhammad. I think he loses to Sean Brady in similar fashion. They're both very similar fighters, very grapple heavy. I think JDM could tag him up on the feet. If Jeff Neal is tagging you with boxing combinations, imagine what JDM could do to you, if Jeff Neal is hitting you with boxing combinations on the feet. That being said, Shavkat Rakhmonov, heavily overrated. And honestly, he just doesn't have the caliber of opponents you want to see heading into a title fight. But for some reason, a lot of people just think he just marauds his way to the title and somehow becomes champion. I don't see it. If he beats Belal Muhammad, it'll be a wonder to me. Honestly, I thought Ian Gary was going to beat him, and Ian Gary came out of that fight looking a lot better than Shavkat Rakhmonov. All right, moving on to the next fighter, we have Ciryl Gane. Now, a lot of people will say he's super overrated, number one heavyweight contender, yada, yada, yada. Honestly, I'm putting him C tier. And I know that means he's slightly slightly underrated at this point, actually. Now, let's go over some of his key wins and achievements before I give you my explanation as to why. Maybe I can convince you as to why Ciryl Gane is honestly kind of underrated at this point in his career. Key wins. His best win is winning the interim title off Derek Lewis, which is honestly crazy to say in 2025 that Derek Lewis fought for an interim title. But regardless, Ciryl Gane knocked him out with a body shot in the 3rd or 4th round, finished him, got the interim title, had a very close fight with Ngannou the fight after that. Before that, he has 2 wins over Alexander Volkov. Alexander Volkov, if you do not know, is a mainstay in the heavyweight division. He's been in there for so long. He's fought Derek Lewis. He's fought Ciryl Gane. He's fought Curtis Blades. He's fought Alistair Overeem. He's fought everyone. He was a champion in Bellator 2. Very legit contender. Ciryl Gane beat him twice, even if the first fight, or the second fight, I should say, was a complete robbery earlier in December of last year. He did not deserve to win that fight, but regardless, it is a win for him in the books. One more win, and I think he could absolutely be fighting for a title again, even if, I would like to see some new, fresh matchups against Tom Aspinall. But regardless, Ciryl Gane, definitely a top contender. He also beat Tai Tuivasa back in the day in France when he was starting up. And on that streak of knockouts, coming off that win over Derek Lewis, he was ranked number 5 at that time. Just a lot of good, solid wins for the heavyweight division, which is not known for being too stacked. I mean, he's beaten Tai Tuivasa, Alexander Volkov twice, Derek Lewis, and Sergey Spivak too. That's another great win. And all of these fighters are in the top 10 of the division. Some of them were in the top 5, like Tai Tuivasa, like Alexander Volkov. And a lot of these wins have aged not the best, but they are still wins nonetheless. And you can't deny that maybe Cyril Gane is lacking the accolades, but he has some of the best striking and movement the heavyweight division has ever seen. You can't deny that. The only other fighter that I would say comes close striking rise to Cyril Gane is Alistair Overeem. Other than that, Cyril Gane is the best striker in the heavyweight division we've ever seen ever. And because of that, and because of his undeniable skills, I feel like I have to put him in the C tier. I mean, people have been hating on him so much after he lost to John Jones in like 2 minutes to submission. But I mean, to be fair, it is John Jones. You know, you can't harp on someone too much for losing to John Jones. So I'm going to say at this point in his career, he's actually slightly underrated, and that's why I'm putting him in the C tier. Moving on, Sean O'Malley, D tier. Now, I know a lot of people say Sean O'Malley is, again, lacking the accolades. He doesn't have the caliber of wins as most other champions in the UFC. He has this kind of weird style. He got a supposedly robbery win over Peter Yan. But before I tell you anything, let's move on to his key wins real quick, okay? His best win by a mile, Aljamain Sterling, by knocking him out in the second round. Cold, very, very slick right-hand step back on Aljamain Sterling, knocked him out, I should say, to win the bantamweight title in 2024 or 2023 it was. But very, very impressive performance from Sean O'Malley. Another win he has is he dominated Marlon Vera after that fight to a decision. And this fight really just showed me why Sean O'Malley, and I know I just got done talking about why Cyril Gane is one of the best strikers in the heavyweight division. Sean O'Malley is one of the best strikers in the UFC, period. All right? He's so slick. And plus, I mentioned it earlier, he also has a decision win over Peter Yan, very highly contested. A lot of people say it was a robbery. I disagree. I think Sean O'Malley won that fight fair and square. And those 3 wins in the bantamweight division, Aljamain Sterling, Peter Yan, Marlon Vera, those are some of the 3 best wins you can have in the bantamweight division. I know Marlon Vera is kind of on a skid right now, having lost to Davison Figueiredo, about to fight Mario Batista. I think he loses that fight too. But Sean O'Malley just has some incredible wins, and his skills are undeniable. And I think that people saying if he loses to Merab a second time, his legacy is in jeopardy, I think that's wrong. I think if Sean O'Malley loses to Merab again, I think he's still one of the best strikers in the UFC, and I think he's still a super talented fighter and could absolutely find his way back to the title, even if he loses to Merab this weekend, or not this weekend, next month, even again. So I think Sean O'Malley, regardless of what people say, he is an incredibly skilled fighter, and because of that, people are disregarding his skills, and I think that makes him super underrated in the current day of the UFC. Moving on, Dan Hooker, A tier. Now, I know a lot of people love Dan Hooker, but come on, man. Let's look at some of these recent wins from Dan Hooker's current 3-fight win streak, okay? You got Mateusz Gamrot by close decision, went to war with Jalen Turner, split decision, which has honestly aged pretty bad. Jalen Turner has recently retired after a loss to Ignacio Bahamondes at UFC 313. And just looking at Dan Hooker's career as a whole, okay? Looking at his losses against Dustin Poirier, which was an absolute war. This guy goes to war every single time he fights, and it is always a barn burner every single time. He's an incredibly fun fighter. I love the guy. He's a great guy outside the cage, but you can't convince me that someone who went to war standing with Jalen Turner and had a war with Mateusz Gamrot and got knocked down by Gamrot beats Justin Gaethje, okay? Justin Gaethje hits so much harder than Mateusz Gamrot and every other lightweight. And a lot of people are saying that if that fight gets rebooked, that Dan Hooker is too rangy, he's too crafty, that he'd beat Justin Gaethje. I don't see it. This guy has lost to Arnold Allen as well. Michael Chandler, he got knocked out by Michael Chandler. You know how crazy that is to say? Michael Chandler has lost to Paddy Pimblett, Charles Oliveira twice, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. And he's only beaten Tony Ferguson, Old Man Ferguson, and Dan Hooker. He has a 2-5 record in the UFC, Michael Chandler does. And Dan Hooker is one of Michael Chandler's only wins. And because of that, honestly, is one of the key reasons why I think Dan Hooker is pretty overrated. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now, 1 fight away from fighting for the title. I don't get it. I know he's super entertaining. People love to see him fight. He should be absolutely a mainstay of the lightweight division like he has been for a long time now. I think in 2020, he was also top 5 in the lightweight division. So he's obviously been skilled for a very long time, but I think people are overestimating his skills and saying that, oh, he beats Justin Gaethje now. He has a close fight with Arman. Charles Oliveira would be a great fight. He loses to all those guys, okay? Max Holloway too. Islam Makhachev completely. He gets dominated by Islam Makhachev. But that being said, Dan Hooker, overrated fighter. Love him to death, but come on, man. Like, really, he's lower. I would say his skill ceiling is top 5 and lower, okay? Like, it's not in the top 5. It's bottom line top 5 and down, all right? That's who I think he usually beats in the UFC, and that's where I think he's going to stay until he eventually retires. Incredibly skilled fighter. By the way, all these fighters, incredibly skilled. Shavkat Rakhmonov, I know I was just harping on him about, oh, he's fighting for the title, overrated. He's incredibly skilled, too. I mean, he was number 1 in the welterweight division last time I checked, and you don't get that by just being not skilled and just being a fraud. You know, he's incredibly skilled, all right? Moving on to this next fighter, Caio Borralho. I'm putting him, A tier or B tier. I'm going to put him in the B tier because Caio Borralho is incredibly young, incredibly skilled, coming off a win over Jared Cannonier. But like I've been saying all episode, this fighter is lacking the accolades that make him one of these top middleweight contenders. All right, let's look over his key wins, okay? Jared Cannonier, at 40 years of age, coming off a loss to Nasruddin Imavov 2 months earlier. Paul Craig by knockout. And Abus Magomedov? I mean, like, who's this guy really fought that makes him, what's the reason I put Caio Borralho on this list is because recently he's becoming under fire for calling for an interim title shot against Khamzat Chimaev because Dricus du Plessis is injured right now. Caio Borralho is calling for an interim title shot in the UFC middleweight division, being ranked number 6, coming off a win over 40-year-old Jared Cannonier. How crazy is that? This guy took 40-year-old Jared Cannonier to a decision, okay? And this guy is in talks for fighting Chimaev. Chimaev is coming off a 2-minute submission win over Robert Whittaker. Caio Borralho should honestly be fighting Robert Whittaker, and he should be lucky he's having that. Because honestly, I don't think he should be fighting in the top 5, period. I think he should be fighting Anthony Hernandez. I think that fight makes way more sense. I just don't get the hype with Caio Borralho. I know he's part of the Fighting Nerds, and the Fighting Nerds are incredibly skilled, and Caio Borralho is an incredibly skilled fighter. I'm not denying that. He's one of my favorite fighters in the middleweight division. He's so fun to watch. I love watching his fights. He's so technical on the ground, on the feet. He's so well-rounded. But, I mean, he's just missing that fighter that when I look at the record, like when I look at Sean O'Malley and I look at his record, I go, whoa, Aljamain Sterling by knockout. That's crazy. When I look at Ciryl Gane, I go, I don't know. Actually, maybe Ciryl Gane is not the best example, but when you look at a fighter's record and you see that fight, like Ilia Topuria, when I look at Ilia Topuria's record and I see Max Holloway by knockout, whoa, that's crazy. That guy's definitely properly rated. When I look at Caio Borralho, I'm like, 40-year-old Jared Cannonier by decision? What? 40-year-old Jared Cannonier by decision and Paul Craig by knockout. Okay, man, sure. Maybe I'm not denying he's some elite contender. He obviously is elite, but he's just missing that fight. That makes me go, wow, that's an insane. Moving on to the final fighter of this tier list, Yair Rodriguez, A tier. Yair Rodriguez, 1-2 in his last 3 fights, coming off a win over Sleepy Boy Patricio Pitbull, a submission win over Josh Emmett, injury submission win over Brian Ortega, to a man of which he lost to in the rematch, and he lost to Alexander Volkanovski, both of which were his last 2 losses. And I think him having the inactivity and not showcasing the skills of a UFC champion is really what's showing for me right now, is that this man is calling for a title shot right now when he honestly should be fighting Diego Lopez. Winner of that should get a title shot. But he has 1 win over the debutant Patricio Pitbull, and that's it. I mean, who else has he really beaten in the UFC? Korean Zombie a long time ago, Jeremy Stevens a long time ago, and the walking punching bag Josh Emmett. I think with all these fighters, he's just really missing that, performance that I don't know. I'm just like, this guy got dominated by Volkanovski. Okay, this guy got manhandled by Brian Ortega. And I could just never see him fighting for a title after all that. That being said, this is the final tier list. That's all we have for you guys. Be sure to check out other episodes on FHNtoday.com and FHNtoday on Spotify. Drop a comment below on who you think the most overrated fighter in the UFC is. For me, it's Shavkat Rakhmonov. Once again, this is Ben Bartels, signing off.